Hi, I'm Amandeep Beesla, and welcome to Between Two Cranes, a podcast on safety culture and innovation. Today, my co-host is Gabe Guetta, co-founder and CEO of Salus, a former construction worker turned tech leader who's leading the safety culture movement for construction industry. We're going to peel back the safety net and dive into the conversations people aren't having when it comes to health and safety, but maybe they should. In today's episode, we're talking about adaptation and adoption in the field, especially when it comes to introducing new elements such as technology. Let's talk about it some more.
But before we start any of this,
Yes.
I have a question for you.
Yeah,
It's a
okay,
little
sure.
off topic, but you know what? It's been bothering me, and I've actually talked to Scott about this
Okay.
as well. Certain sayings that are out there. So, have your cake and eat it too. What in the hell does that mean? Because you know what? Amandeep, why the fuck would I get a cake and not eat it?
That's true. I probably use that on social media somewhere.
Well, I just don't get it.
Have your
What,
cake
can
and
you
eat it too.
shed some light on that saying for me, please?
I honestly don't know where it came from.
Because I use it all the time, and I just realized I have no idea what it means.
Well, it means like you want to have it all.
Screw that.
You want to have it all, but I don't know.
Supposedly,
Yeah.
I'm going to butcher this. Scott researched it, and it's something about you can't have your cake and then eat it too, as in you've already had your cake, so you can't eat it again or something like that. I don't know. It doesn't really make sense to
That
me,
does
but maybe
make
somebody
sense.
can research it. Maybe somebody in the audience, if anyone's been listening, which they probably haven't because I swore and Shannon's going to cut it out or something like that. But we're dealing with the construction industry. We're allowed to swear.
It's construction folk.
We are allowed to share.
It's interesting though, because like with my verbiage, I kind of change it sometimes. Like if I'm in a professional setting, but sometimes it's hard.
I've seen you swear like a pirate.
Oh, totally. When you go from being out in the field and sight straight into a boardroom, you're going to swear. There's going to be some F-bombs drop. But it's okay. It's okay.
It's just the way people communicate.
Yeah,
It's okay.
exactly. We don't mean
okay.
to offend anybody, but, it's going to happen. People are going to get offended.
I agree.
Yeah.
So,
Great for offending people. I think that's what would be interesting.
we were talking about this today.
Yeah.
You kind of have to be, especially if we're talking about our social media presence at Salus. How do you get more, connected to the community, build a brand, all this, and some of the posts that you see getting the most traction. Some of them are not even offensive posts, but it's the way that some people take them can be controversial or not, and those are the ones that you see getting the most traction. And
So true.
I remember talking to Dan Locke actually when we did our podcast, because it was like, you are different than what your persona, your projected persona on your YouTube and everything. When I look at your videos, compared to talking to you on camera and then even off camera, it's even completely different. And he's like, you create a persona that people want to watch and follow, and a lot of the times you can't always be looking for the ideal answer. You got to be not scared to be controversial, create conversation and everything like that, and that's what fuels
It's so true.
a good conversation. It's kind of interesting. We talked about this yesterday with safety, right?
Yes.
It can be very common that we only will say what we think is right because there's regulation behind it. There's you're giving consulting advice that company might get a lawsuit in the future and blah, blah. You always have to kind of toe this line.
Yeah.
You can't go above or below anywhere. You can't, heaven forbid, you really give your perspective on it. But I don't know if that's the best for progressing safety. It's too political almost. It's like,
True.
Where's the harm in? The problem is, can a safety officer challenge what is there in front of their team? Can they be like, we're doing this, I don't agree with it, I don't like it, this is my perspective on it, but technically it's the law, the regulation, whatever it may be. Do we have enough of those types of conversations where we completely question it all?
I think a lot of safeties, they want to play safe, and they want to make it so that
No
it's
pun intended.
Yeah, no pun intended. But well. And so they make it black and white, but even when you look at regulation, it's open to interpretation, and there's so many
That's
areas
true.
of gray.
Yeah.
And like speaking to WorkSafe BC, for example, WCB.
Yeah.
So the way they word it is there's always going to be risks associated. And when you're consulting, there's legalities, there's liabilities. So there's always risks associated, but with that area of gray, what it does is it helps you mitigate or minimize that hazard and do the right thing as much as you can do.
So you said you talked to WorkSafe BC. That's
Yes.
interesting because you were with the BC CSA, so I'm
Yes.
sure you converse with them a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Myself,
Yes.
I've talked to WorkSafe. One, I talked to them from a construction standpoint. I've also tried to talk to them from Salus, but they can't talk to us for whatever reason. But even
Legalities.
Legalities, exactly. The construction side, I've had incidents that have happened where they've shown up on site, and I'm trying to understand and collaborate and ask questions, but they can't. They can't tell me how to do anything or what should have been done better or anything like that. They can't legally.
Yeah.
So what I always find is that they're there to enforce, but there's such a fear around WorkSafe for starters. We all know WorkSafe shows up on site. Everyone knows that they're there because there's like a magic bell that gets rung. And so there's this false reality of what safety is like on those sites. But I think part of it is because it's so hard to have that open dialogue and have that collaborative, challenging approach to talking with the regulatory bodies. Now, I understand why they do it. I understand that if I say, well, my worker fell off the ladder and almost died, and this is what I did, what should I have done better? And if they say, well, you should have done this, and then I go do that, and then something happens, then I turn around and say, you told me to do that. I get why they do it.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that I feel like there's a standstill. There's like a stalemate with the progression of safety in many regards. Yeah, it's progressing in certain ways, but it's not progressing as much in the collaborative approach around. It's moving to more of a corporate progression versus the field input on that progression. Like the field level workers input, the field level workers perspective on it. How they disagree. It's not a safe space.
Yeah.
That's my feeling, at least.
Okay.
That was my feeling. I'm feeling more. It's changing a little bit, but
It is. So, like WCB, they took on more of an authoritative regulatory stance before, like back in the day. Now they're trying to progress towards being more preventative versus being reactive and educating. So putting out like resources and putting out
BCCSA.
Yes, BCCSA, yeah.
Which is incredible.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And BCCSA is just for construction. There's other safety associations for other industries as well. So for example, like for film industry, my good friends over at ActSafe, shameless plug.
Fair enough.
For trucking and
You gotta
trans.
get those names out there.
Yeah.
It's a great initiative
Oh,
that
totally.
BCCSA and everyone has.
Yeah, absolutely. Trucking and transport, they're safety driven.
Yeah.
My good friends at Safety Driven. I got a lot of friends.
Yeah.
But like, so there's other like agencies, there's resources, advisors, there's workshops, seminars, courses, training conferences that they put on. And so we're getting there. We're trying to educate the masses. And so with WorkSafe, what they're doing is they're trying to take on an approach where they too are educating the industry and other like supervisors, leadership, management. So a lot of times what happens is, and I'm going to speak specifically to construction, what happens is there are people now that don't feel very like fearful or intimidated by WorkSafe. They will call up WorkSafe and be like, hey, come out onto my site. And so they'll come out and then they'll get some like pointers or some advice, and then they're much more like receptive. WCB is more receptive to that than if an incident happens and now it's more reactive.
Right.
So they have to get out there. They got to figure what happened
And that's awesome.
yeah.
But what I would say is, how do we, so my perspective of it from my experience was different. It was more fear of safety,
Yeah.
fear of what could happen, fear of WorkSafe.
Yeah.
And I still feel like that's the prominent feeling in the industry, is that stay away. Don't stay away. So, but
Yeah,
I agree
think
with
so.
what you're saying is happening. I agree with the fact that WorkSafe has that mentality of reach out to us, collaborate with us, or bring us in for more of like an audit or preventative. Let's keep it at preventative.
Yeah.
Let's be more
like
preventative. That's true. But I don't think that's known out there. And that's definitely not the feeling out there. The feeling is still WorkSafe shows up on site. Everybody's going to text everybody to make sure that they can
run, hide,
basically stop working.
Coffee break, do everything.
Stop working. We used to just stop working. It's not worth working at this time. So is that really progressing safety because you're so scared that you're going to do something wrong that you just stop doing it?
Yeah.
So how do we change that? How do we get it so that I agree with you? I think preventative and that community aspect is the right way. It's like if you're going to high school and your teachers are there to teach you, but you're so scared of getting in trouble, getting in detention, suspension, expulsion, whatever it may be, that you just don't even work.
Yeah, and you like
you
how
don't,
are you gonna
you're not
learn?
Progressing exactly. So how do we change that? How do we it's their turn and the same thing can be said about any regulatory body. They turn into the enemy.
That's true.
In the perspective of the people that are getting infractions or the end of the disciplinary fines, whatever it may be. So,
and it's interesting because like across the line, so in America, I was talking to a counterpart of mine not too long ago, and they were saying kind of like almost along the same lines.
Yeah.
When OSHA shows up, an OSHA officer, it's like people, it's like almost like there's like fear instilled in them.
Yeah.
And it's a terrifying feeling. And it may even get to the point where people start making mistakes or they're so nervous that they're being watched, that the authorities are there, that the regulators are there, that it takes away from that safety.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't know, bridging that gap. I think bringing the regulators as well as the industry to maybe like a neutral platform where they can share and again, like WCB. So this is the lens of a safety consultant, because when I used to go out onto site, WorkSafe would be there. I wouldn't be terrified and fearful of WorkSafe, but I could see a lot of people going for coffee breaks. So, and then me having that rapport and talking to WorkSafe, I'm like, so what's going on? Like, what's happening? And they're like, well, we have like a lot of new officers coming in. We have, even within their own organization, there's culture, like they're trying to enhance the culture, right? And so having that openness and that eagerness to learn, and they try not to take punitive measures and punish, but they're saying that their main goals and objectives are to educate and inform and arm them with knowledge and references. And this conversation actually I had firsthand with a WorkSafe supervisor. And he deals predominantly with residential, which I believe a majority of them don't speak English. So it's hard to communicate. So I went out on a few different ride-alongs, and so I was helping them translate, and they're like, we don't want to have them do the wrong thing. We want them to do the right thing, but we need to educate them on what the right thing is. And I thought that was brilliant. Like, I absolutely love that. And even recently, like as recent as last year with like COVID and COVID safety plans as well, going out and then informing the employer and educating them, and then helping them with the tools and resources I had at the time with the BCCSA as well. So
I think it's good. I love the fact that mindset is starting to be more prominent, because there is also, in any organization, there's always the good apples and the bad apples. Same with when you think of police officers or whatever it may be. Those regulatory environments. And so I think that, that progression from being more of that community that let's educate, let's guide them, because at the end of the day, you just keep handing out fines. Nobody's learning. They're just getting more and more scared, more and more secluded, more and more forced to try and hide things.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think the initiatives like what, at least in British Columbia, what they do with free consulting through like the BCCSA, which the thing that frustrates me is that most people don't even know that exists.
Yeah.
And I remember actually talking to, we have the luxury with Salus of talking to thousands more people than I ever did, companies than I ever did when I was running a construction company. And I remember this was only a month ago, talking to a company and saying, and they were looking to go to adopt safety.
Yeah.
Forget digital, adopt safety. And they were saying...
Adopt safety?
Adopt.
Yeah.
Tech in the field. We'll get there. Maybe we won't. I don't know.
I love it.
And they were struggling. They were like, we're trying to build a safety manual. We don't know what we're doing. And I was like, have you heard of BCCSA? Like, I know you're a smaller company, but I know costs can be tight, but they'll come in and work with you. There's no cost. BCCSA covers it to bring in a consultant and help you. And they're like, for one, they're like, what are you talking about? That doesn't exist. And then
nothing
the next
comes for
thing,
free nowadays.
yeah. And then next thing they said is, well, wait a minute. Why would I bring in somebody that's really an arm of WorkSafe BC? They're just going to come in and know all the stuff I'm doing wrong, and next thing you know, they're going to show up and just start handing out fines.
Yeah.
And like they're so scared that if they know what I'm really doing, my company's they're gonna shut me down.
They're gonna shut it down.
And that's I thought that. It's like, oh, I can't let them know what we're really doing wrong because I don't even know all the stuff that we're doing wrong.
Yeah.
They're gonna know. I'm gonna bring them in, and all of a sudden I'm now on their radar, and they know that I have this much done, and there's actually 75 other things that I'm supposed to be doing. And then 3 months later, they can come and slap me on the wrist because none of that stuff got it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
But we need that's not progressing anything.
Yeah, and that's absolutely not the case as well.
Yeah.
So with the BCCSA, I can tell you for fact, it's a resource. It's nonprofit. The way it works is employers pay into their WorkSafe premiums, and then that pot, like a portion of it, is put aside by WorkSafe, and then that's how the BCCSA is funded. So it's completely it's at an arm's length.
Yeah.
It's basically the employer's money. So that's why that's why BCCSA says it's the industry, and it's basically it's for the industry by the industry, meaning that they've paid into it and contributed into it. That's so there's no way there's BCCSA, they're not going to go and report to authorities unless it was something critical or crucial where somebody's life was at stake or something very imminent, right? And so and
but that's not across you were, and I know this, I'm asking the question so you can shed more light on this, but in Alberta, there's no non-for-profit, there's no free consulting or anything like that, or is there?
So
do you know of any other provinces or states or anything?
So for example, I spent a bit of time out in Alberta as well.
Yeah.
So Alberta has the ACSA, the Alberta Construction Safety Association.
Right.
The ACSA.
Yeah. But you also know people in there.
Yes, I do. Yeah. Shout out to the executive director, Dan.
Yeah. There you go.
And so they are for profit, but they have it's oil money, right? Yeah. It's oil and gas, it's pipeline. We're talking big safeties and industry on its own in Alberta. And so they have, it's crazy with COVID last year. So they didn't miss a beat. They were online, virtual, everything, resources, courses, training. Yeah. They had their NCSO conference online. So they had people in place, and their organization, it's a very well-oiled machine. And so they have all of that. Yes, it is a membership that you buy into. It is ACSA, it is for profit,
right?
But there's just so much value add to it that it's worth it. And a lot of people do end up going with the ACSA because of everything that they provide.
And what do you feel like? Is it? Do you feel like one's better than the other, or how do you feel about that?
I love both of them.
Yeah.
Because I've had ties. I still have ties with both of them. And I think they really serve their purpose, and they gear towards there's obviously a jurisdiction difference of jurisdiction. So there's different regulations, the way you do things. The underlying foundations are always the same when it comes to safety management systems. And providing all of that, and they're really good about it too. Both the BCCSA and the ACSA. If you go onto their websites as well, there's a lot of content that's ungated. And so, sorry, I'm talking tech here now. Whoa, where did that come from?
It's okay, you're allowed every so often. We should have two hammers here that we just, anytime one of us starts talking tech, we just start hitting the table.
Yeah,
Oh wait,
totally.
we're a software company. I mean, we know technology.
Yeah, exactly.
We know what we're doing. I have a laptop and a computer and a phone.
All your devices.
I'm tech savvy.
So yeah, it's like a wealth of information, and you have people that you can reach out to. So suppose you're on their website and you're having trouble navigating, or you can't find what you're looking for.
Yeah.
They're just like a phone call or an email away.
Yeah.
So they're very receptive.
That's good, because I think at the end of the day, I mean, if we want to get so one of the things that I think is a problem is that most people safety is still new. Like even for me,
Yeah.
I always say this, 7 years ago is when I was introduced to the real safety, which is not just a harness, a hard hat, steel toe boots,
Yeah.
and get some like basic
Not
training
just
done.
PPE.
Yeah, it's more like the actual world of what we know safety to be now, but many people still don't. Or understand the full scope of it or the requirements. I always use a kind of a analogy of like, imagine the first time taxes were ever rolled out.
Yeah.
Companies are like, what are you talking about? Or individuals, how are we even supposed to manage and understand all these regulations? And then come out accountants,
Yeah.
bookkeepers, and the whole process goes. And now we've done it for so long, it's so ingrained in there's laws that change, but it's much fewer.
Yeah.
And it's not progressing the same rate as safety is literally, in my opinion, in the last 7 years, just getting its footing and taking off. And now you have safety consultants coming out of that to help translate regulations and everything else. And then you have it's still not everyone, for one, knows it, understands their requirements. So there's still people are just being pulled into it.
Yeah.
As they work with more and more companies that are enforcing it or whatever it may be. And so you end up with this world that it's like, it's kind of lost a little bit. There's ones that get it. There's ones that don't. There's ones that are that have been doing it for 6 years and their safety programs this far.
Yeah.
And then there's ones that might be a 20-person company that are just trying to do it for the very first time. And I always think, wow, if I came into that without, like, where safety is now as a 20-person company that's never done safety, there's a lot to understand.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And one of the things is like, how do we bridge that? How do we bring everything together? And I do think one of the things is there's not enough people know about these associations and
Yeah, I
how to
agree.
deal with WorkSafe and everything like that. But one avenue I feel like can change that is, and of course, great CEO of a software company is going to talk about software, but it truly is trying to bridge that gap with technology. We know that in the field now, for the first time, I would even say only 4 years ago was this the real change. 4 or 5 years ago, field level workers are adopting technology. Nothing to do with work. I mean, they have hammer drills that are state of the art. The tools are state of the art. They always have been. But actual smartphones are in their hands. I'd say 98% of the industry, for personal reasons. Maybe it's a 65-year-old that's FaceTiming their grandkids. They know how to use it.
Absolutely. And those are skills that they bring. So meaning that they've learned how to use that phone outside of work.
Yes.
They can function, they can navigate, they can kind of work their way around it.
Not intimidating anymore.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Before, technology was always an intimidation factor. That's why I never had a laptop until I started Salus, and I was forced to get a laptop because it was like, it intimidates me. Open that thing and I'm scared.
Yeah.
A smartphone, everyone has. They're not intimidated. And that's a way where we can start connecting the industry, start connecting companies and workers to understanding the rules and regulations that they have the privilege or getting them access to knowledge, understanding what they're supposed to be doing, getting them connected to the BCCSA, companies knowing that they get free consulting, getting them potentially connected to people like WorkSafe in an easier, non-confrontational way. It's almost interesting. It's like things like Twitter, people aren't scared to ask questions and create a conversation.
Yeah.
Then we see where that pendulum goes. But maybe a world like that can be created in safety, where it's like you're asking questions and having conversations without having the fear of them knowing what company you are and who you're with.
Yeah.
so that you can have these open dialogues without being scared of the repercussions.
Yeah,
because I don't know if
absolutely.
we'll get rid of that.
I think with the introduction of smartphones, it just opened up a whole nother world. So now with a smartphone, you can connect with other colleagues, you can connect with workers, having that connection piece. Also, you can jump on the internet as well. So with the
Right.
internet, you can
Find regulations.
Yeah, you can find anything. You can find resources. You can find YouTube videos on how to do things. You
Yeah.
can like educate yourself more on exactly what's going on. It's like having a computer in your pocket. And so having that accessibility, having those resources, being able to like connect and link with other people as well. And then you talk about people asking questions where they're not afraid. There's actually like chats and forums set up. So like, for example, you can go on Facebook and there's networks of other health and safety professionals, and
Right.
you can actually ask them questions, or you can bounce off ideas, opinions, advice, and
Yeah.
say, hey, I'm doing this way. How does everybody else do it?
Right.
Or is there a better way?
Yeah.
Or does this make sense? Or, oh, I have this going on site, but I can't find the regulations that match up with that. So it's interesting because now everybody can learn off one another, and it doesn't have to necessarily be like a formal setting in a classroom.
Yeah.
And so just having that engagement and that openness, that curiosity. A lot of people are I'm very inquisitive.
Yeah.
So, and I like connecting with people. I have that social urge to connect socially as well. And so going on these forums and whatnot. But then you look at it, if we didn't have smartphones, none of this would even be possible. Right?
Let me ask you a question about
Yeah.
that chat room, because I
Sure.
think it's great. I think that it's great that there's safety chats happening. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
But how many of those groups have different demographics of the industry in there? So how many of them have, it's like a safety chat, how many of them
Yeah.
have foremen that are actually a part of that? Laborers that are a part of that? Or is it just the safety community, safety officers, CSOs that are a part of that?
Like the one group on Facebook that I can speak to, I know there's even like WorkSafe BC, like WCB officers in there, but they don't disclose that they're WCB.
Right, I think that's
again
great.
for just
I think that's
liability and
great.
legality, and then they try and leave those biases aside, right?
Yeah.
Put them aside,
That's-
and it's
I
just
think it's great.
safety connecting with other safeties.
Yeah.
So that one group I can think of, I believe it is like Washington, BC, and Alberta. So
that's awesome.
within this area, and then I'm a part of other ones that are strictly like in the States and America, and then there's other ones where it's overseas, and then just trying to like connect to people.
Yep.
But now it's more easier than ever to connect with people, even conferences as well. So
Yeah.
like all of 2021? So all of 2020 and 2021, there were a lot of virtual conferences. So now essentially you're connecting with people from all throughout the globe.
Yeah.
And if they're health and safety professionals, you can have those conversations, and you can have sometimes, like, I like being challenged with regard to like some of my opinions or my beliefs, because it helps me develop and grow. And also like when I'm having these conversations, I learn a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like just having that willingness, that openness to like learn, and then having your beliefs being challenged, you may,
The community.
yeah, totally. And it's brilliant. It's awesome. It's bringing all these great minds and like intellectually stimulating conversations around health and safety, around other topics such as digital safety, all to the forefronts.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. I didn't realize that it was getting that big. I knew that there was a lot of Facebook conversations happening and everything,
Yeah.
but maybe I'm not a safety officer enough to be a part of those groups. I'm not sure. But
It's okay. You can join if you want.
one thing that I would say off the top of my head, or if the feeling I get is like, I
Yeah.
feel like, well, I'd be a little intimidated to go into that group and talk safety. I'm not a safety background.
But you don't have to talk. That's the beauty of the internet nowadays. You can come in and like, not to make it sound creepy, but sometimes I
Listen.
go in
Yeah.
and I just like listen or
Yeah.
observe, and I don't necessarily comment on it.
Yeah.
So you just kind of look and you're like, okay, what's going on, or what's
Yeah.
what's the opinions, right?
Yeah.
So
I think that and I could be wrong again.
Yeah.
Safety officers out there might be like, Gabe, you don't know what you're talking about. Just shut up already. But I think that we need to find a way to bridge the worlds more. Because
Agree.
it's natural that safety officers, the safety community is at the forefront of legislation creating change in safety.
Yeah.
But we all tend to forget. I do this at Salus, I did it at Tross Construction.
Yeah.
You forget why you're doing this stuff, whatever it may be, and who has to do it at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, we're doing safety to protect the workers. And we create regulations, programs, whatever it may be, for those individual workers. And not all companies, a lot of companies are good at trying to bring workers in, but there is this divide that's created where it's almost this like, we're scared when a safety officer comes on site. We feel uncomfortable to be a part of the safety conversation. They're doing safety, the forms and everything, there's no question about that, but how many of them are actually involved in the conversation around where safety is going?
True.
How many of them are in these Facebook groups? And if they're not, because they don't want to be, why? How do we change that?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, everything that safety is doing is for them, to save their lives, to make them safer.
Absolutely.
And if they feel like they don't want to be a part of that group because they just don't want to, why is that? How can we change that? How can we get them more vested in safety where they want to be a part of it?
Yeah.
A new and young worker that's 19 years old that wants to be a part of this group, a foreman that's 70 years old that wants to be a part of the group, right? And make that, because safety is not, it's a community. It's everyone, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think just to kind of close off here, I think as younger people come into the industry and new and young workers, they already bring that skill set of being technologically advanced or tech savvy or having that skill set. And so by them coming in, I see this a lot of times, they're teaching like the older workers.
Right.
And these young people, they're getting into management leadership roles, they're getting into the trades. They know of these groups are hopefully getting there.
Yeah.
And they're more open to like learning new things and having those open conversations.
Yeah.
Whereas with the old school, it was just kind of like shut up and work.
Yeah.
Right?
Get my job done. Get it finished.
It's almost like this hunger for
everything else is a distraction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And with younger people, stereotyping here, but there's almost that hunger to like learn and educate and knowledge and pass that knowledge on as well. Mm-hmm. So good things to come with tech. Yeah.
We kind of jumped around this, didn't we?
We did.
Whatever.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. Yeah.
Adoption of tech in the field. There's no in.
Well, okay. We'll just say.
We just found a typo. That's okay. Perfect. I probably wrote it down. I was like, no, I must be reading this wrong. Because that's normally how it is. That's okay.
It works. Yeah.
I think there's definitely an N missing.
Yeah. It's all good. We're just gonna roll with it.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Just blame it on me. See, I spelled it all out. Wrote it. Yeah, I wrote
Gabe
it.
did it. When all else fails.
Spelled field wrong or something like that. It's normally
the American or the Canadian way.
I'm spelling field. I hope there's only one way, but I think there's only one.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks for coming out.
Do we have to do a silence now? Not for any reason other than to get sound check. Silence done.
I love it.
As we end today's podcast, it would mean the world to me if you would take 5 seconds and push that like button and leave a comment to let us know how we did and show some love. If you have any questions or topics you'd like to explore, tell me about it below. Don't forget to subscribe. One last thing, you're going to want to download the resource on de-risking your business. I'll put the link in the description.
Where's the link?
Up here, maybe here, down below. I don't know. Maybe here.